With me today, as always, Pate, a defense attorney. Welcome.
Good morning,
Glad
Carol.
you're here. I'm going to direct the first question to you. Sabrina Fulton, she said on the stand, I mean, it was really short on direct, right, from the prosecution. She described the tattoos on her son's body, which was actually moving in itself because there were praying hands. He had a tattoo of praying hands, and he had a tattoo of his mother's name. And then she was asked if the screams on the 911 tape were that of her son's, and she said yes. And then the defense started the cross, and that's where I think that it would be easy to veer into insensitivity.
Sure.
What did you think?
Well, I think Mr. O'Mara is treading very carefully. He obviously wants to suggest to the jury that Ms. Fulton knows the importance of who was screaming, and that as Trayvon's mother, she is necessarily going to hear Trayvon's voice in that recording. He was very careful. I don't think he confronted her too much, but I don't think we've heard the last of Ms. Fulton. Her testimony was short because I think there's a piece of evidence in that locker they're trying to get to that the state's going to reintroduce, and they're going to recall her. So she's not finished yet, I don't think.
Which must be so painful for her. I know these things happen, but come on.
She has been well prepared for this testimony. She's calm. She's very clear. She, I think, has been told not to be combative with the lawyers, no matter how much he may try to insult you or shake your testimony. Be cool, be clear, state your point, and she's doing very well as a witness.
Of screen.
Yeah, and Paige, actually, when Trayvon Martin's brother phrased it that way, yes, I heard my brother scream, but not like that before. You thought that was actually effective.
I do, because it's honest. I don't think any brother, and I have a brother, of course, play with each other. You're never going to hear your brother scream like he's about to die when there's a gun in his face. So I think it's legitimate. I think it adds credibility to his testimony, and I think it was important.
So you kind of get where Mark O'Mara was going. Paige Pate was listening to this part of testimony along with me, and at times you kind of grimaced. Why?
Well, because, again, it's very tough for a defense lawyer to cross-examine the victim or the alleged victim's mother. She's going to be sympathetic. She's going to be very emotional. You're not going to shake her testimony. You're not going to get her to change her answer. But what the defense lawyer is trying to do is to suggest to the jury a very important point. As a mother, you don't want your son to be the one to blame for what happened to him. So if it means you hear his voice in that tape, then you hear his voice in that tape. Some lawyers would not have tried to do that during questioning. They would have waited till closing argument. But Mr. O'Mara has always been pushing the envelope, and he did it here again.
So he's saying, like, as a mother, you would be predisposed to believe that any screaming on a 911 call would be that of your son and not the other guy who just shot him.
Right, because you don't want it to be your son's fault that this happened.
That defense attorneys wanted admitted into trial, right, Paige Pate? It was the part of the interview where he told the reporter, when I first listened to that tape, I wasn't sure whether it was my brother or not.
Right, that's exactly what the defense lawyer wanted in, although that would have been a great part of the tape for the prosecution to introduce, but that's not going to happen either. I think the judge made the correct ruling here. Mr. O'Mara was trying to suggest that he was inconsistent in his testimony today, and the judge said, no, he's inconsistent about a minor thing, what the question was, but not his answer, so the tape should not have come in.
So during Trayvon Martin's brother's testimony on the stand, he said pretty much what he said in that interview. At first, he wasn't sure, and he said on the stand it was because I just didn't want to believe that was my brother. Right. I was delusional. I wanted to be because I wanted my brother to still be alive. Still, the jury left the room while the lawyers argued that tape should be allowed into evidence at trial. I found kind of disturbing because they can't get this evidence locker open, Paige. So Trayvon Martin's mother will have to again take the stand. I'm just curious what kind of evidence they're trying to get out of that locker.
I don't know. Maybe they're going to have his mother identify the sweatshirt, maybe some other article of clothing he had on him at the time. We'll just have to see.
What if she had a tape of her son screaming? I mean,
wow.
Is that possible?
That would be unusual. I think if you were going to do that, then you would have allowed the defense to have experts to come in and say, yes, we compared this voice to this voice, and it is the same. I don't anticipate we're going to see that kind of evidence.
Sidebar, let's talk about the testimony that we just heard, because, Paige, it seems to me that on cross, they were trying to get Trayvon Martin's brother to say, well, you know, I didn't really spend that much time with my brother. Maybe I don't really know what he sounds like.
I didn't understand the point of that cross-examination. I don't think it was very effective. This is one of the first times I think Mr. Omar has fallen short. There was no real reason to try to confront him that way and ask him these questions. You didn't really care about him, didn't spend that much time with him. I don't think the jury responded well to that.
Well, plus, he's so much older than Trayvon Martin, 5 or 6 years older.
Right.
And, you know, in normal, usual family relationships, when you're college age, you're not really as connected to your high school age brother.
Right, but it's still your brother. My brother's 4 years younger than I am, but that doesn't mean we're not close. Even though we're not always going out together, I'm still going to recognize his voice if I hear it on a tape.
Quote out of this New York Times article, she was asked if she could ever forgive George Zimmerman, and this is how she answered that question. Quote, "The spiritual side of me knows that eventually I will have to forgive him so that I don't block my blessings. I know that. Am I ready to do that now? I am not. That's something I pray for. I pray for my forgiveness because just like I want God to forgive me, I want to forgive others. But I'm just not at that point now where I can say that I want to forgive him." That says something about her, doesn't it, Paige?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, but it's a mother, and I think to a certain extent you would expect that. I think she's trying. I think she's a spiritual person. But ultimately, maybe this trial will give her some closure. And I'm thinking having to be called back there up on the stand has got to be difficult, but it should be ending soon.
Well, and George, she